Hey guys, this video is meant to guide you through the group project timeline and process overall. So I'm going to give you guys some tips. So please take notes and pause this video as needed. And if you follow the style, you're definitely more likely to get an A on this project. So I'm going to break this down into three different parts of this full group project. Part one starts with organizing the groups. Organize the groups, figure out what talents you have, and how they'll join together with the project. We already discussed emotional intelligence in past peer review videos if you want to look into that. It's okay if you have challenges and disagree with your team members. Work through your problems professionally and personally. And that's part of learning how to work with groups, is learning how to deal with these challenges. Be polite, critique the work, not the person, and just follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So then we figure out the groups, we figure out our client, someone who's easy to work with, someone that can meet with the professor during week 15 or week 16. All right. And then you're going to get groups and the organization approved by the instructor. At that point, you want to meet with the client. This is an opportunity to treat this experience like a job. You're getting the thing that you're getting paid, the way that you're getting paid here is by producing something for a real life organization. And so you can put that on your CV and your resume, and this is a portfolio piece that you can share. So you want to do a good job. When you meet with the client, you want to ask a lot of questions, first about the website. So the purpose, the brand, the look, the subsections that they should include, that you should include, the goals, the interactivity that they expect. And you want to ask questions about the video. Again, purpose, brand, look, and tone. Important sections of the video. Maybe they want their contact number or email at the end or something like that. Maybe they want a particular argument or particular visual in the video. They might have specific requests. Sorry, my throat is going out here. They might have specific requests on actors, types of actors, voiceover, locations, tone, feeling. And if they don't ask these questions, ask it to them. Many subject matter experts or clients in this specific case will not know what questions to ask you. And because you guys are the professionals, and because you guys understand design well, you need to ask these questions to them to see what they're expecting. You don't want to spend a lot of time developing something that they will not like and that you'll have to spend more time redesigning. So ask them all of these questions. And honestly, it's your chance to treat this client like, I don't know, like ChatGPT, like it will give you the answers. In some ways, it's nice to offload that creative output that you would normally have to do of coming up with a tone and a feeling and a theme. And instead, you're just looking at what the client expects of you and what they want out of you, and you're doing your best with the tools that you have to create that. Now, if they do recommend, because they will, something that isn't so great, right? They recommend something that doesn't work with design or style. Maybe they want like a really fast-paced video, but they want it to be sad. And it's like, it's going to be difficult to do, and you can kind of, and you don't want to be impolite, and you don't want to just say, that won't work. You want to listen to them, and you want to find really what it is, why they want that. What is the purpose? Because you can always go back to purpose of the video, and how it's created will influence the purpose, right? Of the expected outcome, right? If we want people to buy something, for example, well, then we maybe don't want to make people feel sad, right? Okay, so make sure you ask those questions. Use it as an opportunity to offload that creative work that you would normally have to do. Incorporate UPDs and other design concepts into the conversation. Be professional and friendly, okay? Let me show you guys a cool little example here. Look at that. That's me 10 years ago. I was doing a similar class project and got to actually go to this museum and research this hike called Lady Mountain. And I actually got to go do this back trail hike and take photos. and write the piece, and it was published in print. And so I was able to then put that on my resume as an experience of getting, published work, which probably helped me get into grad school. I was also then able to ask the guy I worked with if he would write a letter of recommendation, which he did. If you want cool opportunities like that, treat this like a professional and like a job, like an actual experience, okay? Gosh, I'm sorry. You guys probably don't like that. Okay. Brainstorming ideas is the next step. Okay, so after you've met with the client, done all of this work, now you're going to brainstorm ideas for your website and video. You've all have different tasks on what you're planning on doing. So if your task is more video oriented, maybe you want to focus on that. But there should be some general group involvement in this brainstorming process. And as soon as you start brainstorming, you're going to want to start designing and building storyboards and scripts. So that's the end of part one. So part one starts with designing our groups, then figuring out our groups, approving, and then meeting with the client, and then brainstorming after. And so part two starts with developing our storyboard and our scripts. So we've already maybe started, but we're now for sure developing our storyboard and our scripts. And you can think of these different sections as maybe different weeks. It depends on how the semester is set up at that time. Generally, these are going to be broken up in different weeks. In this part, you want to develop that storyboard and script, and before you start shooting. So you might want to just quickly develop your ideas, shoot it, get it done, and then sent off. That's not how this works. You develop your storyboard, your script, and then you meet with the client again and you discuss it with them, right? If you have to, you can meet with them over Zoom, right? If it's meeting face-to-face too often, if it's difficult, you can meet via Zoom. But don't just email your storyboard and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This should be a conversation that you have. You need to persuasively argue for why you've designed it in the way that you have and how it meets the needs of their company and what they asked for, okay? And at that point, again, you need to go through all of those questions. And first of all, ask them if they have any critiques or have any expected changes or what they like or don't like in the script and storyboard. You could email it to them the night before a meeting if you want them to look at it first. But sometimes it's better to go in without them knowing and to explain it as they have it before them, maybe give it to them at that moment. So you have a chance to argue in favor of it. Sometimes creative ideas might sound a little bit strange without a little bit of argument, okay, and discussion. Get some feedback from both the ideas and script of the website as well as the video, okay? So with the website, it's up to you on how you want to draft your ideas. You could draw it out on paper. You could design something basic in some kind of design program and kind of draw out your ideas. If you have a new Mac, they have that new app, don't they? I forgot what it was called. Let's see. It's called Freeform. Okay, there we are. Anyways, use whatever app to design the website and bring them your ideas. And again, get the feedback and take that feedback into serious consideration. This isn't just a buddy telling you, hey, you could do it this way. This is the people that would normally be paying you, right? And so you want to meet their needs as best you can. It's also going to be part of your grade to meet their needs, okay? So, all right. And then so after you meet with your client, then you're going to be revising the storyboard based off of their feedback, and then you'll begin actually designing the website or actually filming the video, okay? Or the video there. And so that's sort of the end of part two. You may, in one of these parts, meet with your professor, part one, part two, part three. If you do meet with your professor in any one of these parts, just make sure you're bringing the required documents, that you're on time, that you take notes, that if you want to talk about group challenges that you're having or challenges with your client, that you've already tried to deal with it on your own, and that when you express these challenges, you maybe also have some plans or some ideas on how to deal with it. Otherwise, we want to spend most of these meetings with the instructor on actually working on the project, any questions you have on the project, and also looking at your ideas themselves to make sure if it seems like they work from our perspective with maybe a little bit more experience in design and video making. Okay, so that's how part 2 will end. Part 3, you're continuing to shoot. You're sticking to your storyboard. With that video, you don't want to change drastically from the storyboard now because the client has approved it, right? If you want to change little things that you think will be okay with the client, that's fine. Major things, you might need to update the client quickly through like a text or a phone call. But you want to have some kind of general plan. What I would recommend, especially if you don't have a lot of time, is to start shooting the first half of the video. When you get about halfway through, and give those SD cards to your editor, who can then start editing. And if you have other SD cards, or get the SD cards back, and then you can finish shooting while the editor has a chance to start editing. That could be helpful. Maybe that won't be helpful. Maybe the editor wants all the footage all at once, but come up with some kind of plan, especially if you're in a tight time frame, on how you can accomplish this by the given deadline. Okay. I would recommend, when you're shooting the video, to keep the same director of photography, the same editor, and if there is some interchange, just make sure that you're keeping true to the same style, that you guys have an understanding of what you're going for in design and look, and that whoever's holding the camera understands that there's very specific requirements, and if there's an editor, there's a very specific style that you're going for. Contact the client if you make any large changes that you feel like need approval. With making the website, as I mentioned a little bit briefly, you want to first kind of design the ideas, write it out, or you could do it digitally. Next, you want to write out all of the content. You can just write it out in Google Docs and just make a note of where it goes. From there, and in fact, while you're doing that, while you're writing out that first draft, the designer of the website can start designing it, and then pulling from that same Google Doc that you've shared with each other, that text into the website. And so you could be working simultaneously, again, if you're running low on time. Okay, so plan ahead, come up with some kind of game plan on how each person will do the task that's required for them. But ideas first with the website, and then you'll write out the content, and then the designer can do the slow task of actually designing and building the website. Make sure that you're designing and building it in a way that you can pass it off to the client and they can continue using it. So if you are a computer programmer, you need to make sure you're giving it to someone who doesn't have computer programming skills and can still access and use and update the website as needed. Okay, so all right, we mentioned meeting with the instructor. That might happen in part 3 here. Okay, you're going to want to meet with the client at the end of part 3. So toward the end of that last section there, that last week, whatever it is, you're going to want to meet with the client with probably at least a second or third or maybe fourth draft. You've revised this a bunch since the first meeting and since meeting your instructor, and you've done a bunch of revisions. And now this is sort of the best of the drafts, right? And you're going to showcase both the website and the video. And again, like the other previous 2 meetings with the client, you're going to try to get as much feedback out of them as you possibly can. Sometimes you have to work them. Sometimes you have to come with questions. You know where the problems are. You know where the choices are. And again, this is the end of the project. This is the end of part 3. We're almost done. So don't ask them questions that will lead to them asking for major changes in the video. Be realistic, okay? You do need to find ways of going above and beyond if you want an A, of course, but you need to be realistic about what changes you can make at this point if you only have a few days of turnaround. Perhaps with editing, you could make a lot of changes, but with original shooting, maybe less. You may have to redo the complete voiceover again at the end if you've already done one before. Oftentimes, because when you record them at different times, it changes the way it sounds. And so if you want to change just one part, it might be better to just re-record the whole thing at the end. So you might have to plan for that in advance, okay? So plan for a few days there after you meet with the client at the end of the part 3 to revise as based off of the feedback they give you. If they say, I love it, it's perfect, that's when you're going to start asking all of the questions about the tone, about the feeling, about, what do you think about what the actor did here at the end of this? And what do you think about how we use this, right? And so you're going to ask specific questions to get them to start talking, because sometimes it's just a little bit difficult for them to be willing to critique someone else's work. Okay, so you need to get them to open up. All right, so you're going to then revise and submit, right? You'll revise based off of the feedback. Again, be realistic. If you ask too much, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. If they ask, well, could you do this and this and this, and you can't, you need to be realistic based off of the time frame. And so that could really damage your grade regarding client satisfaction. That doesn't mean to not try, right? If you don't try, then you're just going to produce a bad text. You just need to make sure you're listening to them and that you're being realistic, as well as still trying to go a bit above and beyond. So you submit your final. I will be meeting with, the instructor will be meeting with the clients in week 15 and maybe some in week 16. You will need to include contact details, preferably a WhatsApp, a Telegram phone number, or an email that I can message or email to set up an appointment with the client to meet via Zoom for 10 to 15 minutes. Please contact your client. In fact, when you meet with your client at part 3 at the end there, make sure to tell your client, that's going to probably be in week 14, that your instructor will be contacting them in week 15 to schedule a meeting, okay? Or maybe even in week 14. So yeah, just make sure your client knows that we're going to be contacting them, that we're going to be asking to meet for 10 to 15 minutes and just asking a few questions. And that this is important for 10% or so of your entire grade. So it's important that we are able to contact and meet with this client. Thanks, guys. Good luck on your final project. Hopefully that information was helpful. This is the timeline that we expect you to follow. This is the way we expect you to work with the client consistently as you have problems, as you have issues, but also as you go through the various storyboards and drafts and final of the document. Once you submit the final to me, you can go ahead and give the website and video over as the final project to them to be completed. And at that point, it's up to them on what they do with that website and with that video. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.